So first of all, let me just say how excited I am to be here with you all today. My name is Sixto Cancel. I'm the founder and CEO of Think of Us. And hopefully I'm loading. I want to share just a little bit about how I come to this work. So a little bit about me is that I entered the foster care system when I was 11 months old, was able to live with my biological mother from 6 to 7, but then re-entered foster care. When I re-entered foster care, I was adopted at the age of 9. And it was a pretty abusive adoption, right? Pretty abusive, pretty racist. And it took me until 13 to really realize that things just weren't normal. And that's when I started to record the abuse, found myself homeless between 13 and 15. And when I turned 15, this was the first time I had that summer youth job. This was the first time I was part of the youth board, right? And learning what did those responsibilities mean. And coming back into the foster care system and being connected to these programs really set the foundation for me to want to understand systems. I want to understand why our system's broken or why our system having the output or the outcome that they're having. And that's how I got into launching a nonprofit that is focused on driving that systemic change in child welfare. And when we look at the system, we look at the deepest work, which is what are the mental models that are pushing the system? What are those power dynamics that are in place, those relationships and connections? And then, what we usually look at systems as the policy, the practice, and resource flows. And so launch this nonprofit to really say, how do we change child welfare? Because there are some things that are broken. And we really organize our work in this kind of 3-pillar way, which is we either spark, support, or co-drive different system change initiatives. So we might spark a project by going ahead and collecting some data and then releasing it to the world. We will support a redesign of a program. Or we'll go ahead and, for example, in California, we have a whole state contract to provide virtual support services where we're helping people navigate resource finding and acquisition of those resources. So that summer job of being able to participate on the youth board, being able to really have this experience where I was working at City Hall, working in these different components, really allowed me to really think through, like, how is it that we solve problems? And what we started to realize is that solving problems, like, you can't do it without actually centering the voices of those who are most impacted by it. And so we continued to do that for a while until we finally were able to go and have quite a bit of interaction with folks like Megan Smith and other folks to hack on some of the biggest problems that we see in foster care, especially those that are related to young people who age out. So I want to give you a quick kind of understanding of what happens in foster care. And if folks can just take a minute to just read these stats of what the outcomes for foster youth were pre-pandemic. And what I would like you to do is kind of in the chat, go ahead and just put in one of the statistics that you see up here that are just shocking or something that really resonates with you. Okay, and I'm seeing the folks starting to chat through. So there are almost 900,000 young people who've spent at least one day in the foster care system between 14 and 26. What we know to be true is that 20% will be homeless. We have 24% who graduate high school. We're looking at a situation where about 3% are able to acquire a bachelor's degree by the age of 26, right? We have 50% of our young people employed. And out of that 50%, according to Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago, about half are making less than $10,000 a year. So the economic outcomes for young people who are in foster care, who experience foster care, were just very poor pre-pandemic. But the question is, what does this look like now? And so what we did is we realized that, one, I just want to state that, the way we look at it is that the child welfare system is just failing, right? And so one of the things that we did was, in order to really understand the situation now, is we came up with a different way of asking young people about what's going on. And part of that was to produce some cash grants and some virtual supports. And so young people were able to apply. And what we got from this application was, in a matter of 3 weeks, we had 27,000 foster youth from across the country apply, apply using this application. And of that, we were able to go ahead and understand quite a few different things. So related to financial security, we asked young people, are you having a money crisis right now? Is your money week to week, month to month? Are you good? Are you stable for 3 months? And what we found, as you can see, is that overall, the 14 to 27-year-olds who submitted an application, identify that they're in this high financial insecurity place, right? And you can see these by age groups, and you can see how, the older our young people got, the more financial insecurity they experience. We can see that by race, race matters. And we can see that those who identify as Black or African American, that the financial insecurity was reported at 80%, right? Versus their Hispanic and white peers who were around that 68 to 70%. When we talked about employment, we asked young people about what was their employment, right? As of November 2020, and what was that experience? How many of them had severe hours cut? How many of them turned around and lost a lot of gig work? How many of them had, suffered in terms of the part-time? And so the reason I'm sharing these is because what we saw was some of the experiences of what had happened to young people. Then we had some open-ended questions from this that we asked this group of 27,000 young people. And we asked them, what is it that they needed money for? And they gave us a response, right? So 7,800 times young people talked about they needed housing or rent, apartment, school, tuition, bills, cars, food. Besides money, we asked young people, besides money, what do you feel is the next biggest need that you have? And again, you see school here, you see housing, right? But the question is, for our young people, what do they believe is the answer to these problems? And when we looked at the other requests that young people submitted, the top request from 38% of the participants was to be connected to a professional who's in the career that they want to be in, right? Was help creating a budget, need professional interview clothing. We have applying for food stamps here, but another one is help writing a resume. And so when I look at this data set, what I'm reading between the lines is that what foster youth across the country have stated as their primary need is this ability to get a job, is the ability to go ahead and be working. That is what the majority of these requests are. So Congress in December stepped in to provide $400 million in emergency funding to states so that they can distribute it. Unfortunately, states still haven't been able to distribute that out, and there's a bunch of bureaucracy hacking that those we're helping with to do. But for me, I'm naming this because right now, at least in foster care, there's this immediate opportunity to go ahead and disperse funds that will help people temporarily. But the long-term recovery here and what the solution that young people are asking for is jobs. And when I think about how to get this done, it's not in the traditional, I feel like, way of siloing things for foster youth, but it's how is that we actually activate the foster care ecosystem to be integrated more with the other, with other ecosystems, so that then we are part of the plan there, right? This is a population that has been traditionally siloed. But I wanted to stop for a moment, and I really wanted us to just be able to understand what is this moment right now. And I was reflecting, for me, this is just not about 250,000 jobs for young people. But for me, what I feel like this bill, this recovery plan, this investment in infrastructure, it is a statement that goes beyond just people need jobs. For our country's history, when we built this country, it was slaves who were critical to the infrastructure of establishing what the United States of America is today. When we continue to go, the railroad system, anytime we've had these leaps in infrastructure, it has been at the expense of people of color. It has been at the expense of people who have migrated to this country. And when we look at these pivotal moments of what has advanced us significantly, we've always been part of that story, but it's always been in an exploitative way, right? So railroad system, when we look at the Industrial Revolution, when we look at how do we even get to space, right? Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, the way that we have been able to advance our infrastructure in this country for so long has always had people of color at the center of it, has always had young people at the center of it, has always been at those expense. But I think what we have the opportunity with this administration in this specific moment is to actually be intentional about being equitable, right? And part of that intentionality around being equitable is not just looking at who might need to experience reskilling, but it's also to upskill our young people, right? And it's also to be inclusive of those who have been at the most marginalized pieces and have intentional strategies of coming in. For me, I believe that this moment right now will probably signify one of the biggest leap in our infrastructure where actually where we have the opportunity to say we were inclusive of the most marginalized communities and that it was not at the expense. At least that is the hope that I have for this moment at this time.